Kunkel here. Make sure that you subscribe to my channel and set the notification bell to all so that you won't miss any of my new content. On this episode of Global Topic, it will be a continuing discussion related to water wastewater on the aspect of structural linings for manhole rehabilitation. Joining me today is John Manhole, Director of Training and Technical Support from Michaels. John, welcome.
Hi, Jim. How's it going?
Going great. Hey, if you could do me a favor and just go through your role with Michaels and what Michaels does in the industry.
Sure. Well, like Jim said, my name is John Manhole. I work for Michaels Corporation. Michaels is one of the largest energy and infrastructure companies in North America. We've got 40 different office locations coast to coast. I work for the Pipe Services Division, and my title as Director of Training and Technical Services, what I do is I concentrate on the rehab services for pipes across the United States, sewer and pipes. You know, our division, what we do is we perform traditional CIPP, UV cured liners, pressure pipe lining, cleaning and televising manhole rehab, spray and place pipe for epoxies and concretes, and then we also do geopolymer lining applications.
Very interesting. Hey, John, let's put some things into perspective here, especially how challenging, manhole rehabilitation for sewer systems can be. In a city like Chicago, for example, approximately how many manholes are there in the metropolitan area?
Well, the EPA estimates that there are around 21 million manholes in the United States alone.
Wow.
A city like Chicago, we have 9 million feet of sewer. And if the typical section of sewer is 250 feet long, in between the manholes, that would equate to about 36,000 manholes in the city of Chicago alone. Now, that's not counting the suburbs that we have or the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District, who has 175 municipalities also feeding into it. So we've got a lot in our area,
That's a lot of manholes. So, John, let me ask you this. Well, why do manholes need rehabilitation?
Jim, there's many reasons why a manhole would need rehab. First and foremost, our sewer systems are getting old. The early structures were constructed of brick or block, and the mortar that used to hold it together, it kind of breaks down in between. If you look behind me, in between the bricks, it breaks down and it begins to crumble over time. And when that happens, the bricks start to come loose and then they start to fall out. And then the wall structure, the integrity of the pipe is then compromised. And this ultimately leads to a collapse. In newer manholes, they're constructed of precast concretes, and we have problems caused by hydrogen sulfide in those manholes and those structures. H2S is a gas that naturally occurs in sewers. The hydrogen sulfide is responsible for lowering the pH level of the concrete walls in the manholes. And when that pH level falls, the biological colonization of Bacillus bacteria begins. Okay, it's a big fancy word, but basically bacteria starts to take over. And in the presence of oxygen, that bacteria has a unique ability to convert hydrogen sulfide gas, which is in the sewers, into sulfuric acids. And that eats away at the concretes. And in the later stages, the acids also begin to corrode the cement binders of the concretes. And that converts it to gypsum, which is a non-load-bearing material, and you know what happens then, all right? So the structures start to fall apart and collapse.
So, obviously these manholes are in a very aggressive, hostile environment, very destructive. What are some of the typical solutions that are used to rehabilitate manholes?
The most common material in manholes for both construction as well as rehab is concrete. By applying a 1/2 inch to 2 inches of concrete to the inside of a manhole wall, it'll rebuild the wall. It'll replace the it'll replace and rebuild the integrity of the structure. Now, there are two types of concretes that we use. The first is a microsilicate mortar, or what we call MSM. This is a Portland-based concrete that is infused with tiny fiberglass rods that provide a higher strength material when it's cured. The MSM does not have a lot of resistance to hydrogen sulfide, so it should be limited to structures serving storm systems or other systems with very little hydrogen sulfide present. The second type of concrete that we use in manhole rehab is calcium aluminate mortar, or what we call CAM. These concretes are infused with aluminum dust that provides additional protection against hydrogen sulfide. And this is the type that we should be using in sanitary systems. A third type of material that we use to rehab manholes are epoxies. So in sewer systems that have very high hydrogen sulfide, for example, lift stations and manholes located closer to those lift stations, and then the treatment plants, we will coat the manholes with about 125 mils of epoxy on the inside. Sometimes we have to rebuild the structure first with the concretes to kind of rebuild the walls, but then we do put a top coat of epoxy on afterwards. The newest type of manhole rehab material that we use now is geopolymer. It's a really cool, fancy product. You know, geopolymer is a manufactured rock, and the polymers within the geopolymer material react with one another and kind of create a mesh. It gives it a higher flexural strength than your standard concretes. The other interesting thing about that is that when you spray concrete onto concrete, you get a cold joint. But with geopolymers, you don't. The polymers react to one another. If you spray one layer and then you spray a second layer, the polymers react and create one solid piece of rock. So it's pretty cool stuff. You know?
Real interesting. So, John, when it comes to, spray, hand-applied polymer linings, what surface preparation is typically conducted?
All right, well, as a coatings guy, Jim, you know that as well as I do that surface prep is everything. Right? First of all, you have to remove all the debris in the manhole, and then you have to wash the entire surface down with at least a 4K power washer. Then you remove any materials, any loose materials, bricks, loose concrete, and then you patch up the large holes. And once you've done all that, you have to stop any and all groundwater or infiltration that's coming into the structure. If you don't remove it, it's going to wash out the material that you're trying to put on the walls. And then finally, after you do that, then you have to check the pH level of the surface that you're trying to coat. And then if it is acidic or not, you need to neutralize it. Something to think about, Jim, is the outside temperatures at which we're working in. Spring and fall right now are usually ideal times, but that's because they don't have the extreme temperatures. If you're working in the summertime with high temperatures, the material will set off really just way too quickly. So you'll have to protect the materials that you're applying from getting too warm in the sun. And on the other extreme, if you're in the wintertime and the material is too cold, it just won't cure at all. Epoxies are really sensitive to temperature changes. There is a very specific temperature range that the materials need to be before you apply them to the walls. Otherwise, they will never set at all.
So in the aspect of these applied linings, I would imagine that, craft workers and inspectors on manhole rehabilitation projects, they really need some specialized training. Is that the case based on your experience, and what skills do they need to be trained and certified in?
Well, manhole workers, they really need to possess a high work ethic. The guys I've worked with take a lot of pride in their work and the finished products that they leave behind. It's their signature that they have. Usually on a manhole crew, there's three guys. The top man, the guy that's working above, he sets the stage. and he has to be in good physical shape, because he's going to be lifting, he or she, I'm sorry, but he's going to be lifting 60-pound bags of concrete all day long. He's going to be breaking them. He's going to be putting them in the hoppers, He also has to know how to properly mix the concrete. So if you add too much water, it's going to be too wet or it's going to be too dry. He has to know the proper consistency of that concrete. He also has to know the equipment inside and out, because if something goes wrong, the concrete's going to set up really quickly. We got to get that fixed, And then he's also responsible for the safety of the guy in the hole. So he has to know a confined space entry. He has to know how to make sure that he is safe and how to get the guy out of there if there is a problem. The bottom guy, or the guy in the manhole, he needs to be a jack of all trades. So again, these guys, they have to be in good physical shape, but you can't be afraid to be in confined spaces for long periods of time. You're going to be in a manhole or in a tank. He also has to know how to prep the walls properly. So he has to know how to wash them down. He has to know how to fix the holes that he finds, how to stop all types of infiltration. He also has to understand and have a good understanding of what structural integrity is and how to rebuild it before he puts a covering over the wall surfaces. And then after all that's done, he also has to have skills, at least experience on how to properly apply the materials. So currently, Jim, there's really nothing left or nothing out there that's for training those manhole guys. The training is left to the contractors. There's no national program that's out there that's available that'll teach these guys or certify the laborers on how to repair a structure properly. Some manufacturers have certifications and some don't. Most of the guys are just selling materials. But what I think is the most exciting thing that's coming up is, like we talked about offline, is the SSPC rehab certification program for manhole rehab. SSPC is a wonderful organization that has a long history of training and certifying coating applicants. Not only do they certify, they also follow up on the work of the certified individuals.
Now, when it comes to the inspector, is there a training and or certification that's provided by another industry association?
Currently, there is not.
There's not, okay. So that's also an area too that there might be some ability to do some specialized training related to the inspection part of that, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Hey, John, we've had a great conversation, and I'm sure we could probably go into a lot more depth and detail on this topic. Is there anything that we did not talk about that you wanted to cover with the viewers of this episode?
All I got to say is, it's important to have a good contractor with a good, solid history of quality work. You get what you pay for. There's a lot of guys that are, they bid work, they come in very inexpensive. And at the end of the day, I'll get the calls from the cities and asking me how to fix the project that they just did. They just paid a lot of money for. So, don't be afraid to check into these guys, and check their backgrounds, make the phone calls to the other municipalities and check on their work, So.
Yeah, it's very, very wise words there. You just, based off experience that you've had working in this industry. John, I want to thank you so much for coming on today and having an opportunity to talk with you.
Jim, it's been an absolute pleasure, and we got to get together again someday soon. So.
I agree with that. Hey, have a great day, John.
You too, buddy. Thank you.